My name is Bill Prescott. I'm one of our associate directors of admission here at WashU. I use he, him, his pronouns. I'm really excited to be kind of moderating tonight's session and answering questions from all of you during the chat. The way that the format for tonight will work, I'm gonna kind of turn things over to some of our wonderful colleagues in our student affairs team, and they're going to briefly introduce themselves and the offices they represent and work for. And then after that, we will open things up for kind of general Q&A. If you have questions at any point during tonight's session, please feel free to post them using the Q&A function of the webinar. We will answer them there. My colleague Virginia Elliott from the admissions office is also working behind the scenes to type answers to questions in the chat and also kind of answer any other questions you may have and pose questions to me and the other panelists here as well. With that, I'm going to stop talking for a couple minutes, and then I'm going to transition over to some of our wonderful colleagues to introduce themselves and share a little bit more about the different offices they represent and work for. And you can see their information here. Will, I'm going to have you kick us off if that's okay.
Great, no problem. Hi, I'm Will Andrews. I'm the executive director for Residential Life housing on WashU's campus. For all of our incoming students, you'll live on the South 40. We have well over 30, about 3,200 bed spaces on the South 40, made up majority of first-year students. We have live-on staff, we have RAs, we have faculty and residents. So anything pertaining to your time on campus living in Res Life comes out of our Residential Life office, from housekeeping to facilities concerns. We're here to welcome you. So yes, that's Residential Life.
Thank you, Will. And I guess one question, just kind of kick us off before I turn things over to Rebecca. What are some things that students should be thinking about now, kind of as they've made their decision to attend WashU, about kind of the housing process or next steps that they should be thinking about in the next few weeks and months?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So what I would encourage students is right now our housing application is open. We want you to go ahead and complete the application by May 15th. So that means even if you complete the application today, you can still go into the housing application, make changes, review over meal plan options, rank order your room preferences. Again, we try our hardest to get students either in their first, second, or third choice, but you will rank anywhere between 5 options. We also encourage you to read over our terms and condition. We do have a live-on requirement, so all first-year students are required to live on campus. And so, yeah, those are great. You have the opportunity to also, during this time, if you want, to look at potential roommates, and we have a search feature in the housing portal for you to do that. But again, that is optional. Most students allow us answer questions on the housing application where we look at your preferences and pair you accordingly to how you answer our matching questions. So, but those are things. I think the most priority is submitting that housing application by May 15th so that as we start to do placements, we'll know exactly the number of students who are going to be enrolling.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Will. Rebecca, I'm going to turn things over to you next to introduce yourself and share a little bit more about your kind of department that you are representing here tonight.
Sure. Thanks, Bill. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here and congratulations on your acceptance to WashU. I serve as the director of our dining services, nutrition services, or I'm the director of our student nutrition and dietary wellness program. All to say, I work for the dining services department. I do have a couple different dietitians on my team who are here to support our students. And we work in collaboration with other campus partners such as Res Life, Student Affairs, Disability Resources, Athletics, and our Health and Wellness Center. In terms of dining, we have a really wide variety of dining options all across our campus, from larger kind of residential spaces, more in our residential areas that offer a variety of kind of consistent options that you might find in each of them, but they also offer some kind of unique station concepts all on their own to kind of give them their own identity. So we have everything from grills to options that are made without the top 9 food allergies at all 3. We have a kosher concept. We have halal concepts. We have 2 C stores or convenience stores. I'm sorry. We use some internal language way too much. And we have a restaurant on campus. So we really try to have a wide variety of options to meet a variety of student needs that can come onto our campus and reside with us. We also have various cafes or kind of satellite locations around campus that are housed in other campus buildings. And so those may be coffee shops with bakery items or grab and go salads and sandwiches. We have authentic Asian food on campus in our library. We have barbecue, Filipino food. So really, we hope to meet, again, a variety of student needs, both nutritionally with services that my team offer, and then also with the food that our dining services program offers.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Rebecca. I guess one question that I have, and it was a common question from students, is kind of the different kind of levels of meal plans, and kind of, can you talk a little bit about kind of the platinum meal plan, which most students are packaged at, and kind of some of the different options the students might have there as well?
Sure. So we do have, as Bill was saying, some different levels of meal plans. You can find all of these on our dining services website, and they should be in your housing application when you're selecting your meal plan. The platinum plan is our kind of highest meal plan that gives students the most points to use on campus. It mostly aligns with if students are trying to eat 3 meals a day around campus. The minimum plan for first year students is a silver meal plan. And that looks like possibly giving students roughly 10-ish, maybe to 12 meals per week. And that really gives students a minimum, as in, I think all meal plans will really depend on what best meets the students' needs and kind of their anticipated spending on campus. But the silver is the minimum because it really gives some flexibility for students who may want to go off campus for the weekends, or who may travel off campus for weekends or want to go off and eat. They may want to do breakfast on their own and go to the grocery store and bring some snacks. So that's the lower plan for first year students, just to give some more flexibility and variety. But I really do recommend, for especially our student athletes who are needing more fuel, the platinum plan is going to give you the most option, at least on campus right now.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And finally, I want to introduce our last panelist tonight, Chris Stone. Chris, if you want to introduce yourself and some of in the offices you're kind of representing here tonight.
Hi, yeah. Good evening, and I'm sorry for this. Hopefully you can hear me. As we started, everything crashed on me, so I'm on my phone right now while we go through the computer restart. I am the Director of Disability Resources at WashU, which specifically is a support for students on campus. We work with each of the colleges, whether an undergrad or graduate student, as well as students enrolled in non-degree seeking. So if people were visiting and taking a course, retirees who may be involved in OSHA Lifetime Learning, or if they're at the School of Medicine. So if you're a WashU student taking a WashU class, you are eligible to seek services through us if you're disabled and need accommodations to access learning, the environment. The people who are on the screen with you right now, Will and Rebecca, we work very closely with all of their departments to ensure that your experience can be as inclusive and engaged as possible, regardless of whether it's inside or outside the classroom. Unlike normal when I come to these, I'm also representing the line that I'm a part of, which is the health and well-being line. And that involves the University Counseling Center, which is Center for Counseling and Psychological Services, Student Health Center, Health Promotion, RSVP, which is Relationship and Sexual Violence Prevention Center, as well as WashU Cares, which is sort of a triage center in very many cases for students who may be struggling with unanticipated physical health or mental health concerns, and just trying to make sure that they are well resourced, even if it's not something they've had exposure to or experience with before.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Chris. One, I guess, kind of initial question is to kick off for you as well. Are there steps students should be thinking about kind of taking over the summer and kind of preparation for entering WashU to kind of help set themselves up for success, kind of with working with some of the different parts of your department, whether it's mental health, physical health, accommodations? Are there any recommendations you would have for students and
Sure. Yeah,
families?
absolutely. This is very much a transition for students as well as families. Um, for the first time, if you have been receiving disability supports through the K-12 environments, the parents have been very heavily involved, and the students frequently are a little more tangential to it. It's very much about them, but not always with them taking the lead. When you leave that K-12 environment and go to a university or a college, the student becomes the person that is going to be front and center. The best thing that you as a student or as a family can do right now is to be working on that transition while you're still at home, while you're still sort of, think of it as a nice slide into it as we're finishing up school, as maybe you're doing those final meetings or starting to do the paperwork for college. Parents put the emphasis on the students. You're there to support them. You don't want them to struggle with it. We don't want them to struggle with it either. So it's a great time just to start turning over some of those tasks. We have our checklists of everything you have to do, whether it's housing, dining, signing up for classes, anything like that. Start trying to really encourage your students to take the lead there. More holistically, if you have specialists, whether it's mental health, physical health, or counseling needs, anything like that, and you're starting to make the transition to St. Louis, starting to try and make those connections before you get here so that you can work in tandem with your providers that you currently have, as well as starting to work with the new providers. I think sometimes we see students struggle when they wait until they get here and then they start trying to do that search. And they're also trying to get used to now being a college student. They're also trying to get used to navigating all of the responsibilities of coursework and, learning how to, I'm looking at the people here again, learning how to eat on campus, learning how to live in communal housing when they've probably not had a lot of experiences like that, learning how to do all of those things. And now they're also trying to deal with things that they could probably do during the summer a little more effectively when they don't have so many stressors on them all at once.
Thank you for that excellent piece of advice, Chris. I'm going to stop sharing my screen as now that we've kind of done some intros and open it up for more for Q&A. Again, I'll kind of ask some of our panelists to answer these as well, kind of as we go through. And again, if you have additional questions, please feel free to drop them in the Q&A, and we'll answer them, as many of them as we can during tonight's session. Will, I'm going to throw the first question over to you, and this is a question kind of on timing. So I know housing applications kind of open right now. Students can fill out the preferences. When do students expect to hear back about their kind of housing placements and assignments this summer?
Great. Now we will release housing assignments usually on July 1st, but I believe that's on a Sunday, so it probably will be on the 2nd. But we typically release it that first week of July, so students will know who their suite mates / roommates are, and they will also have an opportunity to start signing up for a move-in time slot. So you'll start receiving notifications from Res Life after July 1.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Will. Rebecca, I've got a couple dining questions here for you. Kind of, can you talk a little bit about kind of some of the dining halls and the other food stations? Are they peanut free, or how do we treat what are some of the options for students with severe allergens kind of on campus in terms of dining options?
Sure. We don't really use the word free for any of our top fruit allergens just because we really can't guarantee free spaces. So we will say made without or an allergen friendly space. With that being said, we do take extra precautions with staff trainings and dedicated workspaces and designated equipment and utensils. to kind of designate those spaces. In terms of peanuts and tree nuts, though, we do not use peanuts and tree nuts in the production of our food throughout campus. And there's a couple caveats or exceptions to that. One of them is our bakery. We do have tree nuts that we use in some of our bakery options. So I always am having students be mindful of those if they do have a tree nut allergy. And then also we have some prepackaged items in our convenience stores that may be shipped around different locations of campus, but they're prepackaged, they're wrapped and sealed and labeled. So those are the two caveats, and hopefully that helps students to kind of navigate options for them. And we try to keep that as inclusive and possible to kind of make it as mostly made without peanuts or tree nuts as possible. So I hope that answers that question.
Awesome. And we have another kind of couple dining questions here, Rebecca. I'll kind of lump these together. So kind of how are meal plans kind of organized in this? Is it as like a one meal plan equals $1? And then can students also change meal plans partway through the semester if they realize like that they need more food or less food, or kind of how the like kind of some of the more tactile kind of dollar kind of questions?
So yes, I would say the meal plan that you're getting and the points associated with that plan are essentially dollar for dollar. So $1 is roughly a meal point, or is a meal point. You can change your meal plan, but there's some timelines to that. So I saw a question about changing it from one semester to another. Yes, you can. If you pick a plan in the fall and you need to go up on that, or maybe you purchase the gold plan and you want to go down to the silver in the spring, you can do that. You also can change in both semesters, you can change your meal plan within the first 2 weeks of the semester starting. So you can change it from the fall to the spring, and then you have a 2-week deadline to change it as well. And so if you come onto campus in the fall, and again, you need to go up or you want to go down, just remembering that that silver is the minimum for first years, you can do that. Yeah, so hopefully that helps.
Will, I think we have another great question here for you, and I think we know for some students this might be the first time they might be living with someone else kind of in a shared space. So how, if they're in the kind of sense of potential conflicts among roommates, how are students kind of taught to resolve those conflicts, and how does kind of Red's Life kind of help students kind of with that process as well too?
So when students move in, you will have a hall meeting with your RAs, and you'll have an opportunity to meet some of these student leaders, typically juniors or seniors, who will talk through how they will be there to help mentor and support you in your first year. We also have roommate agreements that students will complete. Once they check in, they'll have, we usually give students about a week to 2 weeks to fill out the roommate agreement, where each roommate and suite mate fills in an agreement between each other. And before we make any room changes, typically if there is any conflicts, we go back to that roommate agreement to help students navigate through the tough conversations of how to address situations when things happen between roommates. It happens, but that's why we have a full team here to kind of support students through that process. In the fall, we are full. So, students are going to have to work through if there is conflict with their roommates. But we do have opportunities where students can switch with each other. But as far as just moving, I want to make sure it's very clear we don't have that ability just to move students. And we actually have a no move policy for the first 2 weeks of school.
That's super helpful. Thank you, Will. Chris, I'm going to throw this question over to you because I know you touched on it a little bit kind of in your remarks. But can you maybe go into a little more into the process of a student who has a 504 plan kind of in high school already, kind of how they go about requesting those kind of accommodations further when they're kind of coming to Washington?
Sure. So as a college student, unlike the K-12 setting, you have the opportunity to choose whether or not to disclose disability. There's no obligation to do so, and it's very much in the hands of the student, and the parent. But the student the first thing they can do is just visit our website and submit an application or a new student request. During that, we're going to ask for some information. How does the disability affect you? What have you used in the past? What resources do you think you may need? And then there's an opportunity to provide documentation. So that could be from your provider, from your school, whatever it may be. Typically, if it is a disability that is not readily apparent, that we can sort of observable or plain sight determine, then we are going to need some form of documentation or history to make that evaluation. And so there is a component on the application where you can submit that, you can upload it. And that's the first thing, and that's really sort of a passive step. Once the student has done that, then they can sit back, and the next step is ours. And so from there, Disability Resources is going to begin the review. The student will be reached out to by one of our professional staff who will generally want to set up a time to talk with them to get more firsthand understanding of their experience. And we use all of that to try and figure out what accommodations are necessary to remove barriers, which is a little different than sometimes I think their experiences, which is optimal performance or optimal placement. We're going to be looking at what are the barriers associated with a disability and what do we need to do to mitigate or alleviate that. And in that way, and Will was talking about it earlier with deadlines for housing, it's not the sole reason, but one of the reasons why there are sort of those lock periods is to make sure that our incoming students who may need accommodation that didn't get it in as early as we hope they will, we can navigate some of those things before students are just sort of switching around and making optional decisions. There are other reasons that they do that too. But that all becomes very sort of involved. And then we work with many others. Sometimes it's us, and sometimes we'll work with Rebecca or other people who are maybe able to help them in real time. And it's not necessarily to do an accommodation. Sorry.
Thank you for that, Chris. Rebecca, we've got a few kind of dining questions in here, so I want to throw this to you. Kind of the first one I have is there's a question here kind of about what Bear Bucks and kind of how those kind of work, and can you convert meal points into Bear Bucks or vice versa, or where can you use Bear Bucks? Can you maybe talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. Bear Bucks really aren't associated with our meal plan. When your meal plan is all utilized at some point in the semester, and that really is the goal by the end of the semester, is for a student to use their meal plan or the entirety of their meal plan. You can load Bear Bucks, which is similar in the form that it's non-taxable and it's a currency you can use on campus for dining, but you just load the specific dollar amount that you want to load. You can also use Bear Bucks on campus, and then you can use it through Grubhub off campus. But I think I saw a question about, is there a meal plan that comes with Bear Bucks? But we do not have that. The Platinum plan does have other perks, if you will. There's a coffee club card that you get, and you get a celebration cake throughout the year. So those are some of the perks, but it's not associated with Bear Bucks.
And yeah, I think there's some other questions in here I know about where you can use meal points, and all the venues you mentioned on campus, have different meal options. It's just different prices and things like that, correct?
Yes, you can use your meal plan anywhere. There's one caveat to this, but mostly anywhere on campus. So it's not limited to certain locations based on the plan that you buy or certain food items, anything in what I talked about in terms of all of our spaces except our meal plans or our meal points. The one exception to that is Bauer Cafe in the Night Center. It is not affiliated with our dining program, and so we do not accept meal points at that location. But anywhere else that I mentioned, you are welcome to use your meal plan.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, Rebecca. Will, I've got a question, kind of a follow-up. I think kind of you mentioned roommate agreements. What are some things that kind of people include in roommates? I know some examples here, like eating preferences or bringing allergens, or what are some other things that are commonly kind of we think about kind of in roommate agreements or housing assignments and things like that?
Yeah, so some of the common things I see is guest policy. So if you are sharing a suite with a room with somebody, how much notice do roommates need to notify each other before they allow someone or to host a guest over in their space? We definitely see things around cleanliness. How often, again, we have housekeeping that will go in and clean the suite bathrooms and common bathrooms, but as far as vacuuming, your main living bedroom area and keeping wet towels on the floor. I mean, you'll be surprised some of the things that students put in there. But if it's going to keep the peace, then you want to make sure you're putting it into the roommate agreement. Even when there's like how to confront a roommate if there's a problem, or kind of how they handle those kind of conversations. I've seen students write that into those agreements also. Um, so yeah, it's pretty much a little of everything.
Yeah, that's super helpful, Will. Thank you. Chris, we've got a
Borrowing,
couple.
oh, I know one. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
The biggest one is borrowing food because of
that's a good one.
refrigerators and like putting labels on something. So like I saw one student, like if it has this sticky on it, that means it's not for you. But if it has this color sticky, I don't mind sharing it. So that was the cutest one about food sharing. There were certain things they really didn't want their roommate to touch, and it may have been like a Reese cups. If you saw those in the freezer, those were hands off. They had a note on them, but everything else was fair game.
Those would be my favorite too.
My mother had the same policy at home. Yes.
Yeah,
Sure.
love that. That's a great. I appreciate that one, Will. That's a great one. Chris, I've got a couple questions for you. Kind of thinking about kind of some of the teams you're part of, kind of around student mental health and therapists and prescriptions and things like that. So, for students who may see a therapist, are there any resources or things you and your team would point to and kind of getting support at WashU, or getting prescriptions filled here locally versus getting them filled with their home provider? Kind of any resources that students and families should be aware of.
Sure. I think as far as prescription goes, there is a pharmacy on campus. I think it's a good idea to check into that before you arrive to determine if your prescriptions can be filled locally. I am not the expert when it comes to that. I think I would refer that to the health center directly. But I have had experiences with the students where their prescriptions could not be filled locally because the provider needed to be able to monitor more closely. And having not checked on that until they arrived here, it did present some problems to the family because they were several states away. And you can't just stick pharmaceuticals in the mail and send controlled substances, through UPS. So, so there were some things like that that were definitely of concern, and that would have been helpful to look into before they arrived. I think one of the other things was about mental health and setting up like therapists and that. Many more providers in the last, whatever it's been, 5-6 years, are providing telehealth. But it's going to depend to some degree on their licensure and whether or not they are out of state or in state, because they may be qualified in their home state. I'm from Iowa. I may have a provider who's qualified in Iowa, but I am currently residing in Missouri. And so they may not be able to provide telehealth to me while I'm in Missouri because of my location. So those are the types of things to be looking into during the summer. I'm a strong proponent of, if you have a good relationship with a home provider, don't sever it. But you may also, and probably I think people locally would tell you, find a local provider, even if you have a good relationship with that individual, because you don't know when you're going to need maybe more direct, more hands-on. I will also put the plug in when you look at information about Timely Care, which is a service available to our students 24/7, phone-based or online support. Doesn't have to be major. You can just be homesick. You can be having a bad night. And if you've signed up for that app, a service that the university pays for, then it's just somebody who can help you. And they can also help with more significant concerns, whether it's mental health or physical health as well.
Thank you for that, Chris. I know one question I see here that I'm happy to kind of answer, and then if other folks want to jump in as well. Kind of the question about getting advisors, and students will be kind of assigned a what we call four-year academic advisor kind of over the summer. So students will be notified of that later in the process as well. And that'll be your main kind of point of contact academic advisor when you first arrive on campus. And they'll be with you for all 4 years. But one of the things I love about WashU is the additional layers of advising beyond that, whether it's the Office of Academic Advising, some of the folks here on this call who work in different areas with our student life, student affairs teams, also your major or minor advisors you might pick up, our Center for Career Engagement, Study Abroad. There's a lot of different layers kind of within the advising network, beyond just kind of your first academic advisor that you get when you're assigned kind of as part of your academic division. And you'll often hear our team at WashU folks wanting to know you by every student by name and story. And I think that's a really big part of that experience, of the different layers of advising, and also that transition during first year orientation and kind of that first bare beginnings and things like that as well. Will, I have another great question here from James about kind of what are your top 3 suggestions for kind of how to choose a roommate? I know some students kind of find their roommates kind of via Instagram or other social media groups, but a lot of times students are also kind of doing the housing questionnaire and being assigned by your team. So what are some suggestions you have for people kind of in how to find a roommate that's a really compatible, great match, kind of in whichever option they choose?
So for any parents or anybody on this call,
Yeah.
let your student fill out their questionnaire on their own. Let them be honest about what time they go to bed at night, what temperature they like the room set, how often they like guests. My team works really hard to really pair students up based off of how they honestly answer those questions. So if you're messy, be honest, be messy, because we'll pair you up with someone who may either be a little bit messy or share some commonality where you can live together. But again, I would say it's about 50-50. Some students will try to find just a roommate. Again, you can't pick suite mates. If you do select a roommate, then that is a roommate that you share in a double room. If you're choosing to live in a single, again, our priority is going to be to place you in a double, which you'll have other suite mates along, but you can only pick one person. You can't pick all 4 or 6 spaces for whom you will live with. But I would say college is about new experiences. And if I would not stress over trying to find somebody to be your roommate, because we'll have the opportunity to pair you up based off of your honest answers and answering the questionnaire and the housing application.
Yeah, and I guess kind of a follow-up to that, Will, about how many students kind of come in knowing they have a roommate already kind of picked out kind of between the pair, and how many kind of go in kind of more, I hear the students kind of be more randomly assigned?
I would say it's more like a 60-40 split. About 60% of students will not select a roommate, and about 40% of students do select a roommate. So if you don't select a roommate prior, you're not, the majority of students don't. They're excited about, many times their parents went to college and they found out who their roommate was. So yeah, about 60-40.
60-40. Awesome. Rebecca, I've got a question here for you kind of around meal points. And if students don't use all their points by the end of the semester, by the end of the academic year, do those roll over from semester to semester? Kind of how does that work?
Sure. So your meal plan will not roll over from one academic year to another, but they do roll over from the fall semester to the spring semester. So if you don't use them all in the fall, they will carry over into the spring. You do kind of get your second round of points allotted to you in the spring. And that's just really why we use those first 2 weeks in the semester for you to kind of gauge, here's your meal plan, here's kind of what you're eating and spending on campus, and maybe make some adjustments in that period. But then again, in the spring, you can adjust your meal plan as well within another set of first 2 weeks. So we try to keep it as flexible as possible for students to kind of make those decisions as they go.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for that. Chris, I've got a couple questions kind of about the kind of accommodations kind of requests. So I kind of two-part question. So how flexible, how willing are professors to work with students kind of as they and working with your office kind of these needs, and how soon is it too soon? How soon is too soon to kind of submit accommodation requests and kind of the timeline for when students should kind of handle that if they know they have those
So
specific needs? Yeah. Yes.
sure. So once you have your credentials for WashU, you are able to log into our system and start that process. So we have been reviewing some students now for at least a couple weeks. Not necessarily the same students, but a couple weeks ago, we started receiving some and we're able to review. For the most part, we are still focused on our current WashU students. Finals begin next week. And we continue to receive requests and modification requests now. So that is our priority. However, our coordinators and our assistant directors have been able to start communicating with some of our incoming students. So you're welcome to do that as soon as you are able to get into that system. And that means you would have your username and the login password. So the sooner the better, especially if you have concerns, if you don't have what I'm going to call current, and I can talk about that if we need to, but if you don't have documentation that is relatively recent, meaning the last 5 years, 6 years, if you haven't had anything evaluated since you were in grade school, you want to start that with us now so that we can start working with you to try and get everything in order. If you have concerns about housing or dining or other things, the sooner we can be working on those. Our goal is to make you positioned to have a successful experience. And sometimes it's about information, and sometimes it's about accommodations. Sometimes it's just knowing where those resources are. As far as our faculty, and I'll even extend that to our staff, we have, in my opinion, we have incredibly supportive and helpful individuals who want to work with disabled students and students generally so that they have an opportunity to have the greatest experience possible. There are times when some faculty may have further information that they need. They may have questions. They may find that a particular accommodation or determination challenges something they do in the class. But I am not aware of experiences, and I've been here 5 years, where they are challenging the student or the effort to support the student. Sometimes it has to do with needing more information from us in order to help that student effectively. So I think from that standpoint, you will very much enjoy those experiences with your faculty.
Thank you, Chris. And yeah, I think that was, I think kind of based on some of the other questions I've seen here, it's definitely important to get that time, start working on that documentation and things like that now. It's just, we may not get to the processing all that kind of information kind of for a few weeks or months. So, Will, I've got a question here kind of, I think some students have heard a little bit about the sharing with a purpose program, some of the kind of different places that kind of to get items they might need for their dorm rooms or things like fridges or microwaves. And are there places that ResLife recommends or ways students kind of find those things, whether that's buying things new or some of the reuse, recycle kind of communities and networks that we might have here at WashU?
Yeah, no, we actually have a student-run business named Swap. And at the beginning at move-in on, we call it the Swamp, but it's the Promenade Circle on the South 40. On the basketball court, you're going to see a lot of items that students have either donated that they're going to sell at a very discounted rate. So anywhere from hangers to ironing boards to televisions to clocks, lamps. It's a lot of stuff. So you don't have to buy everything new. Again, a lot of the items are gently used items that upperclassmen, seniors have passed on to a student-run business, because then until they donate many of their funds to a nonprofit organization locally here in St. Louis. We also have the option where we partnered with a company called U Trucking, which was a student-owned business, but they have now become their own business, where they rent micro fridges. If you want items like box water or water jugs, there's a student-run business that runs a water company on campus. So just many opportunities to get a lot of those items where you don't have to actually physically go out and get them, that they're available on campus. But there are local stores during the first week. There'll be shuttles that will take students out to some of our local shopping areas here in St. Louis. So yeah, I would say for move-in, come with as much as you need, but then kind of make a list. Once you find out who your roommate is after July 1, talk it over so you're not duplicating stuff when you arrive to campus.
Yeah, I guess a couple questions kind of follow up on that, Will. Is there a list that Resolute has of things to buy or not to buy, or kind of tips and tricks on things that shouldn't buy? And kind of another question I see here in the chat is for students who might be in a modern double, will they be notified of the other pair kind of in the modern double at the same time they find out their roommate, just in terms of like shared space, like toiletries, bathroom stuff, like all that thing?
So yes, you'll be able to, in the housing portal, see everyone who's your roommate, and then also see who is assigned to the suite. So you'll definitely have access to do that. And what was the second question?
Kind of is there a list of recommendation
Oh.
things of like to buy or not to buy, or especially
Yeah.
maybe for students who might be or parents, since this might be their first child going off to college? I know that's a hard question to ask kind of as well too. But
Yes, no. So yes, you will receive a list through it will be on our website on the moving guide, but also student transitions will also be sending out some key reminders of items that you can bring and things you can't bring. So fish are great, but again, let's see, maybe not a snake. We don't allow snakes unless Chris on this call tells me it's an approved accommodation that you can have a snake. So yes, we have a whole list of items of things you can bring and things you can't. We do allow mini small appliances, because we know students like specialty coffees or they want to cook in the residence halls. We have kitchens in all of our communities. And what we tell students, as long as those items are being used in those spaces and not in their rooms, they're perfectly okay to have on campus. So I see really popular now little waffle irons or the little grills to make sandwiches. As long as they're being used in the proper area in the residence halls, they're okay to be used. Still no candles. Candles are a no-no. Even the little hot plates that warm the candles. I will tell you, parents, students, somebody always knocks it over, and then you have hot wax on the carpet, and we do bill for it.
that's a good one. I appreciate you sharing that one, Will.
Plugins, do plugins.
Plug-in candles. There we go. There we go. Um, Chris, I have a question kind of here more kind of on, in terms of if a student has like some sort of medical emergency, what kind of supports or resources do we have here on campus, or are there kind of in terms of like medical needs and things like that? If there's bigger issues the student might have.
Sure. So a medical emergency is going to be an emergency call, and that will usually be responded to. And I'm looking at him, even though he's not looking at me. Will's probably really familiar with this in housing. Regardless of where individuals are on campus, they put in an emergency call goes in. It's going to be responded to by usually WU PD, as well as the ESTs, the student group first, just because of how close they are, and then we are served by the community. So EMTs will come in. If students have chronic conditions for which medical emergencies, maybe not frequently, but are foreseeable, we strongly encourage them to have identification information, have all the information ready. More and more, even myself, having on my phone just the ICE label, ICE, so that if something were to happen to me and emergency personnel had to respond, they could get to my phone, they could hit that and it would be my in case of emergency person. So they could also notify me that, hey, we've got this guy, you're in his phone. So parents, if you're that emergency contact or having that information, through the university, we also have the expectation for our traditional students that they have emergency contacts on record. So, it operates as in a sense, a small city. So emergency personnel are going to be available and they're going to be coming whenever those calls go in.
Yeah, and I think we have a lot of great, for larger health issues, there's a lot of other support within the larger St. Louis community, the hospital system, and Washington School as well. Will, I have a great kind of question here, kind of two-part question, kind of both move in and move out. So for students who might be arriving, flying into campus, can't bring a lot of large stuff with them kind of prior to the program, can you ship packages like Amazon and stuff to WashU in advance? And then kind of on the flip side of that, when students are moving out at the end of the academic year, does WashU have storage for students available for their personal belongings, or are there other ways students can kind of store kind of personal bigger room items like futons, stuff like that, kind of over the breaks as well? So kind of two-part question, moving in and moving out, with kind of getting things to and from your dorm rooms if you're coming from farther away.
So yes, we do. We have a mail center that's on the South 40. And students, what I would say is you can't start shipping items until like the first week of August. Don't send it any earlier than that. But yes, you can ship boxes to campus, because you will have on July 1, when we release your housing assignment, your student MSC number and address will be available for you to do that. So I know a lot of families like to send packages from all sorts of companies to come onto campus. We also have the option, because again, as an approved vendor, it's called U Trucking. They've partnered where they can, if you ship through them, your items will arrive to campus and be placed in your suite once you arrive to campus. There are fees associated with that, but that is definitely an option that students can. They mail like a box kit, and you can fill it all up. I think you drop it off at like a UPS or a FedEx, and then it arrives to their warehouse, and then those items are dropped off in your room, and they're there when you arrive. For when it's time to move out, we partner again with University Trucking, where you pack up your items in a box, you put a label on it, and then you leave, and then the trucking company comes, picks those items up, and takes it to their warehouse. There are other options where I've seen students, we have many storage facilities that are nearby campus, and I've seen suite mates and parents go together, rent a storage facility and store their student items with other student items in a storage facility. And then I've also seen the parents who bring the van and the truck, and they move out and drive it back to Utah, and then they're bringing it back the following fall. So there are many options for moving out. I always say, just remember, the amount of stuff you bring, it's exciting bringing it, but it's hard to to take it back because you do accumulate quite a few things.
It multiplies. No matter what you bring, you're going to end up with a lot more.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. Got time for a couple more questions. Chris and Rebecca, I might throw this one to one or both of you. For students who have very severe kind of allergy needs or accommodations, is that something they register with this with Chris with your office or Rebecca, or is that something you guys your kind of office kind of work together directly with students, and who should they kind of reach out to if they have more specific questions kind of about that process? So
Rebecca, do you want to go? You want me to go?
You can go first and I'll add.
All right. Yes, if an allergy rises to the level of interfering with students' health. Now, some people have allergies where they are relatively minor and it's an annoyance, in which case we are referring them to dining, if it's a dining related, to help them navigate those food services on campus. Other students, these allergies are very significant. They can cause anaphylaxis. They can cause very life-threatening things, in which case, if a student starts with us, we frequently are going to go through our process first, and then we're also going to be connecting with dining services if it's food related, because an accommodation is designed to remove or mitigate a barrier. If dining services can do that through their very extensive services already, that's a good thing. We don't need an accommodation then, although it would be good to have a record of it in case things come up later. So in most situations, 99 out of 100, dining services can meet those needs. There may be that one individual for whom, even with proactive effort, all of these things put in place, it may be significant to the degree where we need to be notifying faculty that they have a student in class who we are asking that they not allow certain things in the classroom, or where we find that there are environmental factors that need to be addressed. Very often we've been, from somebody who has to navigate this, I'm so happy we've got dining services that can work with students in that way. It's rare that somebody would have that level of support through their own services.
Yeah, and just to kind of add to Chris's comment, when anyone comes to my office or works with someone on my team, I usually always recommend that they connect with disability resources and put their documentation through with them, just because you never know when they may need to be connected with them throughout their time here at WashU. With that being said, we do try to really have an inclusive dining option. So, we talked about our kind of peanut tree nut policy on campus. Simple servings is at our big 3 large locations, and it's made without the top 9 food allergens. And I didn't talk about this, but we also have a Simple Servings Express platform that is also in those big 3 dining locations, the Bears Den, Duck, and Village. It is only available on Grubhub, whereas everything else is really, you can walk up and order, or also order on Grubhub. But Simple Servings Express allows students to customize their order, and that is a platform where we have used in the past for students who have allergies that are outside of the top 9. Maybe it's garlic, maybe it's onion, maybe it's peaches. So that gives us an opportunity to kind of use that as an ordering mechanism for students. And there are always a handful of students every year that have a variety of combination of different allergens. They're outside the top 9, and we just have to work one-on-one with them and develop a plan that really works for them on our campus so that they can eat as normally as possible as any other student. And so if that is your student, or if that is you, I really recommend that you reach out to us sooner than later. At least in early summer, so we can get to know you and your specific needs and really get you connected with our chef and our management team, so you can really be supported when you get here in August.
Awesome. Thank you both for answering that. And I think we have time for one last question. I think this is a great one. So Will, I'm going to throw this to you. And question from Austin. Is it true that WashU has Tempur-Pedic mattresses in all of the dorms on the South 40?
So we do have Tempur-Pedic memory foam mattresses. Yes. We ensure that you are going to have a very restful rest while sleeping in the residence halls.
Yeah.
And most of our beds, just so you know, they're twin XL long. And for bedding, this is what I always hear students say: bring a good pillow that you like, because you'll be surprised. You can have the nicest mattress all day, but if you don't have a good pillow to lay your head on, then that won't be great. And then always bring a nice comforter, something that's going to keep you warm, because it does get cold here in St. Louis. But then, yeah. And we also do mattress protectors, so that's something else we do add to it. So, but yes, we do have Tempur-Pedic mattresses that are very restful, and I don't ever hear students complain about them.
Yeah, that's a great question. And a fun way to kind of to end um, our evening tonight. Well, thank you all for everyone who joined us for this evening. I know we covered a lot of different questions kind of in our hour together. So thank you all for joining us. I know Virginia and I posted some links kind of in the chat for y'all. So if you have questions on some of the topics we discussed tonight or want more resources to any of kind of the different departments that we're here on this panel, please definitely check those out. If you have questions for us on the admission side, please do not hesitate to reach out to your admissions officer, our student financial services counselor. We're happy to answer those questions as well as you kind of move through the process over the next few weeks. But again, thank you all for joining us this evening. Again, congratulations to students. We're so excited to have many of you joining us on campus this fall. And if you're still deciding kind of over the next couple of weeks before that May 1st deadline, please let us know how we can help. We're happy to answer any questions you may have as you make that college choice. And we're excited for all of you as you wrap up senior year. Congratulations again, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your evening and rest of your day. Thank you all.